Hello, Brovs. We're back with The Making of a Vampire. And we head into Chapter 5, the title, Chapter, The Making of a Vampire. I did learn a few things about the Count of Saint Germain, which I hope I'm saying right. I don't really care if I am. That there was supposedly a Jacques Saint Germain who came to New Orleans and sometime in the 1900s, I think, and supposedly he was accused of vampirism and shared the same traits as the Count. And he was the basis for Loew and Rice's vampire novels. So there you go. There's that aspect of it as well. And I think there's also a video game character named after this same man. The making of the vampire. First, there were little girls who disappeared without a trace, then teenagers, nice, plump girls. Had they been killed, their corpses would have been found somewhere, but no single corpse had been discovered ever. The parents, deep in sorrow, went alone or in groups from village to village, asking everybody, again and again, about the girls and kids. No one had seen them. Several months passed. Nobody saw the Count either, but the villagers knew he was living in the castle because of those windows in the tower, which were always lit after midnight. There he is, Michael the Brave, Prince of Wallachia. Once a week, the bailiff came down to the village in the Count's black carriage, pulled by two beautiful black stallions. He always brought ordinary food and wine, seemingly for the servants, but never expensive food, as would have been fit for the Count and his bailiff. He also asked for something not usually sold in shops at the time, ice. The peasant never bought ice from the shops. They used to build their own ice houses at home, under the ground, where they stored ice in winter and preserved it over the hot season for their house needs. From the bailiff's talk, the peasants understood that he needed ice to preserve a special food he prepared himself for the Count, who was suffering from illness for several years. The Count was so weak now, the bailiff told the villagers, that he couldn't even walk. He, the bailiff, was trying to fortify his master by nourishing him with that special food. Why don't you call a midwife or a medicine man to cure him? Mr. Mayor asked the bailiff. At that time, in that remote region of Transylvania, the midwives and medicine men were the only physicians. Many learned doctors, seen him before his coming here. Oh, that's just supposed to be old English. I was like, why is there 3 mistakes? The bailiff answered in his accented speech, but no one can cure him, brav. After many years in his service, Here I am who know what he needs and how to care of him. I do not need doctors anymore. I'm careful myself and feed him like a baby. Let me call Mr. Priest to read something good for him from the Bible and spray him with holy water, an innocent little girl said in her bird-like voice. Oh, dear me, my dear young lady, don't. Why do you wish to disturb Mr. Priest when I know what the Count needs? Air is good up there on the hill, and that thick wood that surrounds the castle is quiet and recreative. This helps very much restoration of health and fortification, and I foresee the day. Is that foresee the day? I foresee the day not far from now when he come down here to say you hello. What does he look like? Mr. Notary Public asked. He was known for his curiosity. Well, tall and handsome, long fingers. Sound Russian, don't I? Well, moronic Russian. Beautiful teeth. Never in his life did he ask the barber to make him extraction. At that time in Transylvania, the barber was the expert of the village in dentistry, like Figaro in Sevilla. Such discussions usually took place in the inn of the village, where merchants and countrymen settled their businesses with the help of a glass of tuica. Sometimes the bailiff couldn't find the right word for what he needed, and the peasants did not understand always what he wanted. "What country are you from?" Mr. Constable asked him once. Far country, far country. Toward sunset, big country and rich." "You don't know its name." "Of course I don't know its name, but you do." "What is the name?" "Frenchland." "Oh, yes, France." "So you are French, my friend," uttered the constable, looking at him more closely. "Yes, I am. So what?" said the bailiff, placed his arms akimbo. And the bailiff placed his arms akimbo, the way he saw the Marshal de Belleisle do in Versailles. "Never mind, just take care of yourself," the constable answered, pulling his hat over the eyebrows and looking once again at him from under the brim. Then suddenly the rumor spread all over the country. As never before that winter, the thick woods that surrounded the castle became full of wolves. The peasants who went into the woods to gather branches or make logs for their stoves had problems with those wild animals. When a wolf is alone, it never dares to attack the human, but when they gather in a pack, they have guts. Intelligent as they are, they do not launch their attack from one side only. 2 or 3 wolves lie always in ambush. There's medieval Transylvania. Behind the peasant, while the others set upon him forcefully in the front. Then those from behind assail stealthily, jump on the back of the unaware peasant, and thrust their sharp fangs directly in the victim's nape, breaking his backbone. When the peasant is on horseback or in a cart, pulled by horses, the wolves' attack is even more skillful. First, they frighten the horses with their wild howling and feign audacious attacks. The horses cannot run away because the wolves are all around and lunge from all sides. When the horses are thoroughly exhausted and driven mad with fright, the wolves kill them first, then the driver, and eat them altogether at one time. That winter, the peasants had been lucky enough to notice the gathering of the wolves before the wild animals could do any harm. So they never went into the woods otherwise than in groups. They picked up their branches and logs, piled them in several carts, and came back to the village together. So the wolves did not dare to attack them, only howled at them from far away. Each time the peasants went into the forest, they found wolf traces all around the castle. One day, when the peasants came quite near the castle in search of logs, they found something strange in the snow, in a clearing, the leftovers from a wolf's meal, ends and morsels of the bones of some large animal, but no blood. It was obvious that the hungry beast ate everything edible, including flesh, skin, and perhaps the fur of their victim. But how was it possible for the wolves, the peasants asked themselves in wonder, to devour a victim without leaving any trace of blood on the snow? Moreover, the remaining bones were sufficiently large to suggest a big animal, perhaps a cow or a horse, but no cow or horse was missing from the stables. There were no deer in that region. One of the peasants, who was so timid and lackadaisical that the others called him in derision the strong mind of the village, said drowsily, "Perhaps here is one of our runaways. 2 weeks ago it was that fatty Ilona who disappeared from her home." In that small community, everybody knew Fatty Ilona, the daughter of the shoemaker. She was not really fat, but buxom, an attractive girl of 20. "Shut up, you strong mind. What could Fatty Ilona look for here, so near to the castle?" The other peasants laughed out of the wrong sides of their mouths, and that day they went home quickly, engrossed in their thoughts. Several days passed. One of the villagers left the inn at a very late hour. The full moon made everything visible on the main road of the village. He was alone and tipsy, and when he arrived at a crossroad, he had the impression of seeing Fatty Ilona in front of him on the other side of the road, waving at him in a most appealing and alluring manner. Everything was shining with snow, and it was cold, but Ilona was dressed in a rather loose chemise that showed many secret details of her young body. Figure 41. Woo! Let's go look at this sexy-ass drawing, which hopefully is not as bad as Vlad. What is this? Figure 40. We're close. I can smell the blood of a fair maiden. This ought to be funny. Oh my God, this is painful. Never try. Oh, there she is. Oh, there she is. It's like a centerfold. And oh my God, need to be a fucking cyclops. Not a cyclops. What's that thing called with 8 arms? An octopus. Oh my God, this is fucking painful. And I just broke the spine. There she is. She is pretty damn hot drawing. Look at this woman. Why is she naked from the belly down? Alona, alluring at a crossroad. From an illustration by H.R. Heston. And I split the damn spine. That's what I was trying to avoid. However drunk the man was, he distinguished an air of ferocity in her smile. He didn't like buxom women and became angry. You crazy Alona, you'll catch cold. Don't you know your parents have been looking for you for 2 weeks? Go home quickly and don't linger on the streets anymore. You'll be in for it. He walked past her, but the air of ferocity in Alona's smile did not vanish from his mind. After a few steps, he looked back. Fatty Alona was no longer waving invitingly. Her face, lit by the full moon, was silvery pale, and her eyes had the ferocity of a predator. A smirk of greed contorted her lips, from between which 2 white fangs were protruding clearly. She was raising her hands, not this fucking guy again, toward him with wildly spread fingers which seemed to him to be claws. He got the feeling that something weird, if not satanic, had changed Alona into a rapacious beast, and he became terribly frightened. He crossed himself several times and ran away from there as fast as he could in his inebriety. Next day, he told his friends about his encounter with Alona. One of them went to the shoemaker's and asked him if his daughter had come back. The answer was a simple but sad no. A few weeks passed without any other incident, but the villagers became very suspicious. Then one night, when the last customers drank their last drops at the inn, and the keeper was ready to lock the front door, the loud neighing of 2 horses outside made them all start. It was soon after midnight, and was unusual in that small village to walk horses at that time. So the keeper opened the door very cautiously. He saw the Count's carriage stopped in front of his inn. The bailiff was helping a tall gentleman, dressed in an expensive fur coat, to get out of the carriage. Then they both entered the inn, and the bailiff announced in a rough, deep-sounding voice, His Excellency, the Count. He was a tall young man of an extraordinary pallor, strong and stately. His eyebrows were rich, almost meeting over the nose, an aquiline and well-marked nose with sensual, arched nostrils. His ears, extremely pointed, jutted out from the thick of his curly, bushy, brownish hair. He had a short beard which girdled his face, but no mustaches. His cruelly looking mouth had deeply colored lips, and the upper lip was slightly receded. 2 sharp white teeth were protruding over the lower lip. In the half-darkness of the inn, where at that time only 2 candles remained lit, his reddish eyes were gleaming through oriental, half-closed lids like phosphorus. For a while he looked arrogantly at the few humble people who sat motionless at their tables in front of their glasses. One of them, who had just emptied his glass, froze with the glass in his hand. The innkeeper was still holding the door and looked petrified at the newcomers. The Count then said loudly, "Hello, my good men." "Hell, your excellency," the men answered all together. "Close that door, my good fellow," he ordered to the keeper. "Here is some money. Give everybody to drink." And he threw on the table in front of the astounded peasants a shiny gold coin. Nobody dared to speak. The Count watched silently, without drinking, without sitting down, until the others drank their drinks to the last drop. Then he said, with the same loud voice, "Have a prosperous day, my good men," and left the inn, followed by his bailiff. Next day, the inn just opened and was filled with people to its capacity. Everybody asked questions in chorus, and all wanted to learn from the keeper all sorts of details about the Count. The women asked one before the other what he looked like, how he spoke, how sharp his teeth, how gleaming his gaze, how he threw the gold coin on the table, how he ordered the drinks, and so on. That day the keeper did the best business of his life. Now the peasants were more suspicious than ever. The strange countenance of their lord was not to appease their worries. Someone compared the count's teeth with the white fangs of the apparition seen at the crossroads several nights before that looked like fatty Alona. Some other recalled what his grandfather told him about vampires and werewolves. From there to fear and excitement was, see if I can, what's the grave of Rabbi Loew in Prague? Excitement was only one step, which was done. They were also excited that one of the servants who went to the castle to work in daytime decided to hide himself there and see what happened during the night. Am I on the right page? I am. When he returned to the village after the night spent there, he was stricken with horror and told the not less horrified villagers that he had heard the following conversation in German. I warn you again, Dracula, if you do not keep your word, I put immediately a sharp end to my services. I have fed you with the best refreshing blood to be found ever, and now you are strong and stately. Now you must pay me back. You must order without any delay to your she-vampire to suck my blood out of me. I really don't understand why you adjourn time and again to fulfill your part of the agreement. Why are you in such a hurry, Saint Germain? You are a good partner. You know how to lure buxom girls onto my appetite and make excellent coffins for those who become vampires. Moreover, you had that marvelous idea of how to get rid of those who failed by serving their dried bodies to my friends, the wolves. I have waited for centuries for such a skillful partner. And now you want me to hand you out to Alona? Why are you so cruel with yourself? Listen, don't play the fool with me. You know very well that I am fed up with my life. You must give me this chance as soon as possible. Perhaps this is the only way to distract that horrid curse from me. I am very tired. I long for a rest. I want to die. I don't play the fool with you. You do with yourself. You cannot discard the all-powerful curse with cheap demoniac tricks, can you? It is not a matter of tricks. It is all that logical. It is all that logical. The power of a spell, yours, may counteract the curse that keeps me bound down here. Let Alona bite me deep in my throat and suck all the blood out of my cursed veins. Let your spell work. Let her and you, both of you, try to change me into a vampire. Then you would wander again, you fool, in search of blood. You would be half dead only. Maybe, but only for a while. I'll wander across all this country, frighten these peasants to death again and again, bite as many girls as I can, until all become exasperated. Then they would find my coffin and drive a stake through my cursed heart. I hope this would kill me for good and all. I don't think so. I hope even not. However, suppose you are right and you die. What happens with the money in England? You promise me. This is fucking Count Dracula. Bartering with a fool. You are my successor, and your name is in the surrogate court of London, as you know. No, my friend, I don't like to be your successor. I don't know what this means to be the inheritor of the wandering Jew, even if he took another name for the circumstances. What I want is this. You buy an estate on my name somewhere near London, in a pleasant suburb, and in a nice place. If things get hard for me here, I must have a place somewhere else to retreat. Then we'll see to it and change you in one of my kind. Change you in one of my kind. I suppose that means to one of my kind. You scoundrel and liar. Then you'll find another pretext for postponing. No, you buy an estate for me near London. Meanwhile, you fetch buxom girls for my delight. We save those who become vampires in well-locked, roomy coffins. We serve the others to my friends, the wolves. Listen to them, the children of the night. What a music they make, bruv. At that moment, a lugubrious howl pierced the chilly night and pervaded every corner of the room. You liar! I warn you, this will be your last lie. I don't lie to you, Saint Germain, but I must tell you again that I don't think your expectations would be fulfilled. The curse cast upon you is much stronger than my power. It is not true. It is not true. You lie again. Would this man ever lie to you? The Count of Saint Germain, the adventurer, from an engraving of 1783. Kind of looks like Shakespeare if you look at him just right. This strained discussion continued until morning, the peasant told his mates. At one time I heard the Count asking for food and saw the bailiff bringing a large bowl with ice, on which there was a short-necked bottle. The Count grasped it greedily and drank at large gulps, but he was so greedy that some of the content poured out of his mouth by its corners, oozing down on his chin. It was blood, florid blood. Be careful, the bailiff said. Only 3 bottles remain from that girl I threw to your friends, and Alona has no more blood. Drink carefully until we catch another girl. Then a cock was heard trilling, and they felt the dawn approaching. They left that large room and went downstairs. In the dungeons, I followed them, although I was very much afraid of being discovered. The basement is like hell, humid and mildewy, cold and dark and mournful. There in the middle of a partition I saw a large coffin built in stone. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the Count making himself thin like an onion foil and entering the coffin through the small space between the slab and the walls of the coffin. Then the bailiff went to bed in his room on the first floor. I pinched my nose to make sure that what I've heard and seen was not a dream. It wasn't. I was awake. I decided to get out of that cursed place and moved toward the porch when I noticed the shadow lingering near the entrance to the dungeons. I hid myself around the corner and stared at it. It was Ilona, and I guessed she was looking for another coffin to sleep the day off. I was not curious to see where her coffin was and ran away, very scared. The peasants looked baffled at each other. Their worst suspicions were ascertained by the strange story of their mate, but like many peasants of the world, they didn't dare to comment openly on what they had heard. They crossed piously and went home. A few days later, Marika, a teenager, daughter of James the tailor, heard her dog barking late in the night and went out to see it. She never came back, and next morning James found the head of the dog behind the house in a pond of blood. The rest had been eaten by the wolves. The peasants began to curse the castle and its weird inhabitants, yet they didn't dare to act. Then another girl disappeared without trace. Anna, the daughter of Matthew the cowherd. One night when Matthew was working with his wife at the village stable, milking the cows and cleaning, the neighbors of his home heard some fierce calls for help. When they went to Matthew's house, they found the house empty, the door open, and Anna, a girl of 21, missing. She never came back home. This time the villagers were furious. Sunday after the Mass, they spoke with their priest and decided to go all together to the castle with forks and axes and scythes and destroy that nest of evil. They formed a long column with the priest in front and a tall cross to protect them from worse. Some carried torches. When they arrived at the place, they met the servants who were leaving. Neither the Count nor the bailiff were in the castle. They had left for England that very morning. The priest advised them not to trespass upon those premises in the absence of the owner. He then officiated a short mass to discard the evil, sprayed holy water on the porch, and listened to the wolves who were howling painfully far away. Then they all went home, very discontented. They were silent and mournful. It would be nonsensical to bother the reader with Count Dracula's activity in England. All the writers and investigators of these legends have already informed the public by means of many plays, films, and books of what happened to him in that country. In reality and imagination, I will therefore not repeat the story of the miraculous landing in the harbor at Whitby one stormy night of an empty schooner, Demeter, whose skipper, dead for several days, had been found fastened by his hands to a spoke of the wheel, the flesh of his hands cut to the bone by this string. by the string. The legend said the actual skipper who drove the schooner into the harbor was Count Dracula himself. Nor will I remind the fantastic business voyage to Transylvania, specifically to the castle in Bargau Pass, the wyvern as Saint Germain's symbol on his ex libris. By the gift of most wise Count of Saint Germain, who passed through the circle of the earth. Nor will I remind the fantastic business voyage to Transylvania, specifically to the castle in Bargau Pass of the young solicitor Jonathan Harker, a story which is totally fictitious, I suppose, or the buying in the name of Count Dracula by a rich Frenchman called Montferrat or Montfiore of an estate at Purfleet, Exeter, near London, and of several houses in London proper, a transaction listed in the London cadastral register, or the imaginary role played in Dracula's plots by the lunatic Redfield who fed himself on flies and was Dracula's disciple in England, or how Lucy Westenra fell into Dracula's clutches, died, and then returned to Hampstead as a vampire, the Bloofer lady who sucked off the blood of several boys in that town, or how Dracula, after being cornered by Jonathan Harker's friends, fled in panic from England, sailed to Varna, Bulgaria, and then returned to Transylvania, perhaps on the waves of the Blue Danube, where he was killed by his pursuers. What I am going to tell the reader here is a strange story, not yet mentioned in the modern publications, which I found in a torn-apart manuscript of Bratislava, about the grotesque struggle not for life, which would have been a commonplace, but for death, a struggle carried on by Saint Germain against Dracula. The manuscript ended with a remark that seemed to me pretentious. For the entity behind Saint Germain, it was not a struggle against Dracula, but against humanity itself, against the long-lasting human endeavor for life, in other words, against the force that activates any human movement. It was also a symbol of the most deceiving illusion of this world that men have sought for ages and will seek to the end of the days. The thing that they have not, the thing which always seems to them to be more beautiful than the thing they have. The grotesque struggle took place in Transylvania after Saint Germain fulfilled Dracula's request and bought for him a residence in England. For the small fortune invested by Saint Germain in London, and primarily as a reward for his many abductions of innocent girls, Dracula remained obliged to his bailiff and promised, however reluctantly, to let one of his she-vampires suck the blood out of Saint Germain. As it is known, such sucking, if performed under the spell of a vampire, brings about a state of half-death in the victim, who becomes a half-demon. From there, Saint Germain planned to pass over into a state of total death, which was forbidden to him because of his terrible sin. Dracula's interest was quite contrary. He wanted to keep Saint Germain with him. At the same time, Dracula was secretly tempted to engage himself in this uncanny flight and test his powers, which he detained from the Lord of this world, against the power of the Lord of heavens, who laid the curse on Saint Germain. He knew very well that he was not allowed to conduct such a test, which was a blasphemy. He also knew that his punishment would be dreadful if he was caught. The laws of the Lord of this world are strictly enforced. Therefore, on one hand, he loudly tried to dissuade Saint Germain from resorting to his magical powers. On the other hand, he surreptitiously did everything to stir the other's hope in a favorable outcome. On their way back, Dracula and Saint Germain sailed to Hamburg, and from there they took the train to Budapest. At that time, Budapest was the last point in Eastern Europe where somebody could go by train. Then they traveled by diligence to Alba, Iulia, the capital of Transylvania. During the voyage, Saint Germain was very nervous, always asking Dracula to fulfill his obligations. Whenever it was possible, Dracula stopped near cemeteries and praised the charm of that grinning lady who wears a black dress and a sharp scythe. There it is. Jesus Christ, I go, but thou shalt stay till I return. After a painting by Edward Zier, 1885. Classic on the Wandering Jew. Let's see if I got enough time here. When they crossed the Transylvanian border on their way to Alba, Saint Germain became particularly impatient and strongly requested that Dracula carry out his duties right there. When the diligence stopped at the next post relay, they remained there and looked for the local inn. It was a tiny town which had only one road. All the houses were ranged on one side or the other of that road. The inn was in the same building with the post relay. It was already night. The villagers slept. The silence and the dark isolated the other houses from the single lighted building, the inn, at the post relay. The only noise to be heard was the neighing of the few horses which waited there for other diligence. Wooden hills could be distinguished in the night on both sides of the town, and the two travelers learned that the hills belong to the Apuscent, I can't read that word because it's incomplete, mountains. The air was cold and fresh as it usually is in mountains. The inn was a modest two-floor, four-sided shingle house covered with straw, having a large wooden porch and a backyard. A tall chimney was rising high above the roof. There was a shelter for horses in the backyard over which a kerosene lamp threw its yellowish-reddish light. The lamp was hanging from strings at the level of the second floor, and its light fell on a long balcony that overhung around the courtyard. A few beautifully hand-carved wooden posts supported the balcony from place to place, as well as the eaves. The rampant of the balcony, the pediments hanging over the porticos, and the windows were carved in wood too, with various floral and animal motifs. And we're going to stop there because I'm at 33 minutes. Goodbye, bruv. Goodbye.